It all started on a typical Monday morning in Melbourne. I remember that day so clearly because it was the day my little ferret, Bandit, decided to go on his own urban adventure. Bandit wasn't just any pet, he was my constant companion, a mischievous, sleek little creature who loved to explore but had never once gone beyond the walls of our apartment. But somehow, in a split second when I wasn't looking, he slipped out the door and disappeared into the sprawling concrete jungle of Melbourne's central business district. I was running late for work and just briefly opened the front door to let in the delivery guy. Bandit, quick as lightning, darted past unnoticed. When I realized he was gone, my heart stopped. A ferret loose in the middle of one of Australia's busiest city centres, it was every owner's nightmare. I shouted his name down the street, but all I got was the usual cacophony of honking cars, footsteps, and distant chatter. Bandit was gone, swallowed up by a city of steel and glass. I immediately started to search. The first few hours felt surreal. Melbourne CBD is a labyrinth of laneways, office towers, cafes, and shops. A maze for even the most experienced urban dweller, let alone a tiny ferret. I posted flyers everywhere, alerted nearby businesses, and posted on social media, hoping someone would spot him. But as the afternoon wore on, hope started to fade. I kept replaying every moment in my mind. How did he manage to survive out there? Ferrets are indoor animals. They aren't used to the loud noises, the smells, the endless crowds of people and strangers. I feared the worst. Had he gotten lost? Trapped? Hurt? Or worse, had he been caught by someone who might not understand what a ferret is? What no one knows about Bandit is that he's incredibly clever. He's fast, nimble, and fiercely curious, but he's also small, a tiny shadow slipping under doors and through cracks. I clung to the hope that somehow, that smallness and cleverness were helping him survive. But as night fell, the city grew colder and less forgiving. Melbourne's famous laneways, usually vibrant with nightlife, suddenly seemed dark and dangerous. I stayed out until midnight, searching every corner, calling out for him until my voice was hoarse. The police and animal rescue teams were sympathetic but had little advice other than to keep looking. I barely slept that night, imagining Bandit hiding somewhere, scared and alone, but still alive. Little did I know, Bandit was already starting his incredible journey through the heart of Melbourne, a journey that would take him through some of the most unexpected places, before he finally showed up where no one could have predicted. The next morning, I woke up exhausted but determined to keep searching. Melbourne was buzzing as usual, office workers flooding the streets, trams rumbling by, and the usual swarm of tourists snapping photos. Yet somewhere in that crowd was Bandit, dodging through legs, hiding in shadows, and somehow surviving. I decided to widen my search and visited some of the city's laneways and hidden corners where people might not think to look. I went into cafes, spoke to shop owners, left treats and water in discreet spots. But still, no sign of him. What I didn't realize then was how well Bandit was adapting. Ferrets have an incredible sense of smell and hearing, and Bandit was using those instincts to navigate this strange urban wilderness. He was avoiding busy streets, slipping through cracks between buildings, and taking refuge in places that seemed improbable for an animal so small. One of the strangest things I learned later was that Bandit had found shelter in one of Melbourne's high-end boutiques, a shoe store on Collins Street. It sounds unbelievable, but it makes sense when you think about it. Those stores have thick carpets, cozy corners, and quiet back rooms where someone like Bandit could hide without being noticed. Plus, the staff are used to keeping things neat and secure, so it wasn't a place where he'd be disturbed constantly. Meanwhile, I was contacting every pet rescue and animal shelter in the city, but ferrets aren't common pets in Melbourne, and most places hadn't dealt with lost ferrets before. I even made a trip to a nearby vet, hoping that if someone found Bandit and brought him in, the vet would know how to help. Despite all my efforts, the city felt overwhelming and indifferent to my little crisis. But then, something incredible happened. A message popped up on a community Facebook group. A shop assistant from that shoe store had spotted a small, furry animal darting between shelves. At first, they thought it might be a rat, but when they looked closer, they realized it was a ferret. That message was the first real lead I'd had in nearly 2 days. I immediately called the shop, my heart pounding. They told me Bandit was safe but still hiding, probably scared but otherwise unharmed. Relief washed over me, mixed with excitement. He was alive, and I was going to get him back. I rushed down to the store, prepared for a wild chase. But when I arrived, I found a small crowd gathered, and Bandit was nowhere in sight. The staff described him as elusive, slipping in and out of tight spots like a shadow. This was turning into a test of patience and nerve. As I stood there, watching the staff quietly leave out bits of food and water, I realized Bandit was not just surviving, he was adapting, hiding in plain sight in one of the most unexpected places. But how long could he keep this up? And could I convince him to trust me again? The next few hours felt like an eternity. I stayed close, hoping to coax him out, but Bandit was still the master of stealth. By the third day, the reality of the situation really hit me. Bandit had been out there, lost, scared, but somehow surviving, in the heart of Melbourne's busiest district for 3 whole days. 3 days in a concrete jungle, surrounded by thousands of strangers and dangers I could only imagine. I was beyond worried, but I still refused to give up. That morning, I arrived at the shoe store before it opened, hoping that in the quiet moments before the city fully woke up, Bandit might feel safe enough to come out. The staff had been incredible, leaving bits of food in strategic spots and keeping an eye out for him without disturbing the displays or the customers. As I crouched near the back of the store, whispering his name, a tiny rustle caught my attention. There, just under a velvet display table, Bandit's curious black eyes peered out. He was thinner than I remembered, his fur a little ruffled, but alive and alert. I didn't want to scare him off again, so I slowly reached in with a handful of treats, his favorite dried chicken bits. It took some coaxing, but after what felt like an eternity, he cautiously stepped forward. His tiny paws touched my hand, and the relief I felt was overwhelming. I wrapped him gently in a soft cloth, feeling his little body relax in my arms. Bandit had survived 3 days on his own in the busiest part of Melbourne, dodging dangers I could barely imagine. The noise, the people, the traffic, it would have been terrifying for any small animal. Yet somehow, he found hiding spots, managed to find water, and trusted enough to eat the food left by kind strangers. As we left the store, the staff cheered quietly, and I thanked them over and over. Their kindness and patience had made all the difference. Bandit's escape had turned into a citywide search, a community effort, and a reminder of how even in the heart of a bustling metropolis, unexpected compassion exists. Back home, Bandit recovered quickly. He was quieter than usual, probably exhausted from his ordeal, but he was safe. That experience changed how I saw Melbourne, not just as a city of concrete and commerce, but as a place where life, even the smallest kind, could find a way to survive. Looking back, I'm amazed by Bandit's resilience and the kindness of the people who helped. It was a harrowing experience, but it brought home something powerful. No matter how big the city, or how lost you feel, there's always hope. And sometimes, hope shows up in the shape of a little ferret hiding in a high-end shoe store.